Hello and welcome back to Rock Records Reviewed. My name's Adam, and as something of a tribute to Taylor Hawkins, today we're going to take a look at the top 10 rock drummers of all time. Now, I play the drums, I used to teach the drums, and although I'm by no means a great drummer, I do know what makes a great drummer. But we're not going to look at the technical wizards and the faultless players of the session world today. I like drummers to play with character, heart, soul, individuality. I like musicians best when they bring their style to the table, and it doesn't just complement the band, it adds to the ingredients that makes the band great. And as such, if you're expecting to see players like Steve Gadd, Vinnie Colaiuta, even Hal Blaine in this list, you're going to be disappointed, because I'm looking specifically at drummers in bands who help create an iconic sound by holding it down for their bandmates with that extra magic ingredient that only sort of drummers can bring and add. Now, every drummer is different. You may think it's the simplest thing in the world to hold down a straight beat and that all the drummers would sound the same doing it, but you could not be more wrong. Some play soft, some play hard, some push the beat, some pull the beat. Some swing it, some play it straight, some speed up, some slow down. All of this adds to a drummer's unique feel, and I've played with scores of drummers over the years, often on the same songs, and believe me, every single one of them has played with a different feel. You could argue this is a list really of my top 10 favourite drummers, but yeah, what are you going to do? As usual, I'll try to justify their inclusions as we go along. So look, let's dim the lights, let's start the count, watch me for the breaks, and don't forget to play the ride through the chorus. Let's begin. At number 10, I'm going to put Nick Mason of Pink Floyd. Now, Nick Mason would be the first person to admit that he's the most understated drummer and unassuming drummer on this list, and he never makes lists of the top drummers of all time, really, but he's gonna make mine specifically because of his understated playing. He has a beautiful tone on his drums, and I think his measured playing and his approach belie a passion and a feel that really makes Pink Floyd sound so spectacular. His style has changed over the years, where in the earlier days of Pink Floyd, he was much more adventurous around the kit. But as the band developed, he began to hold back and ultimately hold down the beat. He plays ever so slightly behind the beat, and that gives Pink Floyd's songs real weight. So when you listen to Comfortably Numb or Time, for example, they have a real sense of drama and tension, which is a crucial element to making those songs sound really big and powerful, even though the band themselves are not playing very loud or very hard. I've met Nick Mason, and he is every inch the gentleman you would expect him to be, but I think beneath that English country gent exterior, there beats the heart of a very passionate artist, and his drumming is certainly, I think, the very heart of Pink Floyd. At number 9, I'm going to put Mr. Roger Taylor of Queen. Now, as an accomplished all-round musician, singer and songwriter, it's no surprise that few drummers play the song or understand the drummer's role in a band as much as Roger Taylor does. With his rich, thick drum tones and his slightly open hi-hat, he can hold down a groove, like, for example, on Another One Bites the Dust, better than anyone, or he can explode across the kit with these fantastic tom rolls like he does on Now I'm Here. But he can do absolutely everything in between as well. Queen's versatility as a band owes a great deal to these 4 talented members, knowing that it's always the song that is king, not the player or the solo. And I think that Roger Taylor famously hates drum solos, and he prefers to let the song speak for itself. Let's not forget that he's also he was very handsome, he was lean, he was cool and dynamic, and he's the very epitome of the rock star drummer, and responsible for thousands of kids taking up the drums in the first place, not least Taylor Hawkins himself, who was Roger Taylor's biggest fan. And whilst there are technically superior drummers out there, Roger is no slouch whatsoever, and the very, very definition of a drummer who will put the song first. And that's a rarer thing than you might expect. At number 8, I am going to put Mr. Ginger Baker of Cream. Now, Ginger was a proper student of music. He studied and absorbed jazz as a young player and regarded himself very much as a jazz player. But as he developed, he explored African music as well. And through his playing, he appropriated elements of both of those styles into his playing to fuse this kind of jazz African rock style, which became something instantly recognizable. In a power trio like Cream, there's a lot of space you have to fill because you've got Jack Bruce's bass on one side, Eric Clapton on the other. You've only got the 3 instruments. And he did that. If you listen, for example, to the intro of White Room, or you listen to the beat on Sunshine of Your Love, he often plays the toms like another drummer would play the hi-hats. Where he would play through the bar on the toms, maybe in 8s. Now, what I mean by 8s is a bar in rock music is more often than not 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you play 8s, you're filling in the space between the 4s as well as the 4s themselves. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's playing in 8s, or you can even play in 16s. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, he also used to use 2 kick drums as well, and all of this would add more depth to his patterns and help fill all that space down at the bottom end of the music. He was legendarily hot-headed, if not even unpleasant, and he was scathingly dismissive of a lot of other drummers, referring to them as shed builders or carpenters, as opposed to artists or musicians. That, of course, is very, very unfair on them. But his lofty opinion of his own drumming, I think, eventually kind of worked against him through the years. And documentaries like Beware of Mr. Baker have done nothing to endear him to the general public. But he's undoubtedly a brilliant player with his complex, syncopated patterns. And he's underpinned some of the greatest rock classics with his own style. At number 7, I'm going to put the late, great Charlie Watts. I find it hard to talk about Charlie without feeling just that little bit emotional. I'm going to go see the Stones in Hyde Park this summer, and he won't be there. And while Steve Jordan is, a fabulous drummer, it would be impossible for him to try and recreate Charlie's sort of loose, jazzy swing that's been the bedrock of the Stones sound for 60 years. Keith has often said that many a Stones song started with a Charlie Watts beat when they were writing, and you can hear that in so many of their recordings. He was never flashy. He was always unmistakably Charlie Watts. From Get Off My Cloud to Brown Sugar through to Doom and Gloom. He plays just behind the beat, often in concert, to the point of bringing the song to a halt. But that's the Stones, and for 60 years people have been lapping it up. It's going to be fascinating to hear any new material with Jordan, but already that it's just going to lack that unmistakable Charlie groove that has become so familiar over these decades. At number 6, I'm going to put Mr. Ringo Starr, by some way the most famous drummer on this list, because he played in some band called I forget the name. Look, the Beatles simply would not have been the Beatles without Ringo. They'd have been a very, very different band. We all know he isn't a technical wizard, but that doesn't mean one jot when it's your drums that drive and swing the biggest, most popular songs of all time. Listen to She Loves You with its simple, effective tom roll at the start, or something like I Saw Her Standing There, which would be really easy to slog away at, sounding like you are building a shed. But, with Ringo's lightness of touch, he plays across the hi-hat rather than on the hi-hat, and that gives it a much, much more gentle push and really moves it along with a swing. He was a left-handed drummer playing a right-handed kit, so immediately he had this really sort of unorthodox style. And many, many drummers find that hard to emulate, even to this day. But of course, he was also very, very creative with some of his parts. Tomorrow Never Knows, Ticket to Ride, Here Comes the Sun, the tom rolls on A Day in the Life. These are drum moments that will last for all time. They are beyond iconic. They are now part of the very, very fabric of what drummers learn and what they try to play. It's such a tired cliche to roll out that old phrase that Ringo wasn't even the best drummer in the Beatles, because any drummer with any heart or soul will tell you what a fabulous player Ringo Starr was. So yeah, let's get to the top 5. And I suspect you might not be too surprised by the names in here. At number 5, I'm going to put Keith Moon of The Who. So Moon the Loon played the drums like he lived his life. Fast, furious, out of control. Somewhat irresponsibly, and often, but thrilling, exciting. He did unexpected things. He was often very, very funny. He simply refused to be bound by the conventional drumming shackles of timekeeping, accuracy, and space. He could do those things. I just don't think he really wanted to. It wasn't in his DNA. He was often musically sparring with John Entwistle and Pete Townsend, and it's that exciting balance between the three instruments all playing together as lead instruments that gave The Who their kind of incredible live sound and energy. Often a drummer will play straight through a verse and then will signpost a chorus or add dynamic at the end of the verse with a fill. But Keith Moon would simply play fills all the way through the verse. And he'd play fills on anything: the toms, the kick, the hi-hats, the cymbals, the snare, anything he could hit. He just had this restless energy that came out in his lifestyle and his drumming. There was a time when all young drummers wanted to play like Keith Moon, where they'd pick up the sticks and they'd just go crazy across the kit, like Animal from the Muppets, who, as legend had it, was based on Keith Moon. And they would be doing this for 3 straight minutes through the song while everyone else in the band was telling them to shut up and play straight. But I think now, in this era of drum machines and sequences, his style is kind of out of fashion, and I know plenty of musicians who can't stand the way he plays. But I think there's a glorious spirit in Keith Moon's approach and style, and I love to listen to it in all its uninhibited glory. So at number 4, I am going to put Mr. Ian Paice from Deep Purple. I'm not sure why I'm calling everybody Mr. It seems like something I'm doing this morning. But Mr. Ian Paice from Deep Purple. Few drummers are as capable as Ian Paice. He can dazzle you with a lightning flourish, such as on Burn, or he can hold down a fantastic groove before accenting it with a beautiful fill that seems to just flow out of his hands like liquid gold. He generally used just the one kick drum, but his most famous intro, which is absolutely breathtaking on the song Fireball, he used 2 when he borrowed a second kick drum from Keith Moon, who was in the studio next door at the time. Paice had speed, technique, he was explosive, and he was always really tasteful as well. He never really overdid it. Heavily influenced by jazz drummers, he always played with a really subtle swing, which you can especially hear in his fills and flourishes. His impressively rounded drumming talent, I think, will ensure he'll always be near the top of these lists, and rightly so, as he was one of the key drummers of the 70s, I think, who helped take the craft to another level. So let's look at the top 3. And these 3 drummers really are a bit special and incredibly stylistic. Number 3, from the Police, Stewart Copeland. Energy, drive, tone, and such an intelligent approach to the drums, I think, that makes Stewart Copeland one of the most individual and instantly recognisable players in the world. His contribution to the Police was so vital to their sound. He wrote parts for the song that have literally become landmark moments in drumming. For example, listen to his intro on Roxanne, where he leaves the first beat open before coming in on the next half beat with the kick and then the snare on the 2. there's so much space and openness in his drumming. You know, you can hear it on Walking on the Moon. You can hear that real sparse tastefulness on Every Breath You Take, and scores of other examples aside. And he did his dynamics with a lot of cymbals, which sonically occupy a much, much higher register. So there isn't too much big sound down below, which is one of the reasons why the Police sounds so sort of, the Police sound is so sort of taut. And also, of course, his drums were famously tuned very high, which adds a sense of urgency and, again, that tightness to all the parts. He did like to speed up live sometimes, but I think that's okay. You know, a live concert when the adrenaline is pumping, I think. But, you know, you just can't deny he was a great, great stylist and a terrifically musical player. So our top two, and I think if you went to pretty much any drum poll in the world, these two drummers would occupy the top two spaces. And it really is just which order you want to put them in. But I'm going to put at number two, Neal Peart of Rush, another late great drummer. Regarded by many as the Yoda of drums. Technically as dazzling a drummer as you'll find on this list. You know, one of the things that sets him apart were his arrangements. His drum arrangements are astonishing. I don't even know how he remembers them, let alone plays them. And his precision is absolutely breathtaking. All the more remarkable then that he can play all that with an intelligence and a real feel. There's a real crispness to his style that's just unmistakably Neal Peart. The other thing I admire is his willingness to keep learning and developing, and his own self-criticism. He constantly talked about parts in his songs like Tom Sawyer and how much of a challenge they were to play, and how seldom he felt he got them as right as he wanted to get them. And you know, all 20 years into his career, he felt his drumming was getting a bit tired and staid, and he completely deconstructed his style and approach and changed to a jazz grip and found a whole new feel that reinvigorated his passion for playing. In many, many ways, he is the drummer's drummer. And there's a famous drummer's joke that goes, how many drummers does it take to change a light bulb? Well, it takes 5. 1 to change the light bulb and 4 to tell you that Neal Peart would have done it much better. I think he was a humble man who would have been a bit embarrassed by that joke, but his demeanour undoubtedly belied a colossal talent. So that takes us to the number one drummer, and I'm sure you've guessed who it is by now. It is, of course, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin. How can it be anyone else? I don't think any other drummer has combined such power, dynamic, feel, swing, technical ability and creativity in one absolute monster of a musician as John Henry Bonham. From the opening track of their debut album, Led Zeppelin, drummers everywhere knew the game had changed when they heard him playing these incredibly tricky kick drum patterns in Good Times, Bad Times. But, you know, that snare sound and that kick sound, a lot of that came from just the sheer power of his playing. He used to play incredibly loud, but to play that loud and still have such feel is remarkable. Listen to something like Since I've Been Loving You. He's still playing loudly, but somehow on this sparse, passionate blues, he's playing in all the right spaces. He's never dominating the sound, the sonic space, like a lesser drummer playing the same with the same strength would. You know, his style, you can hear it most famously on Moby Dick, on Led Zeppelin 2, but, you know, listen to his iconic intro and outro on Rock and Roll on the 4th album. The sensational groove of When the Levee Breaks. You know, he's one of the most sampled players because his sound is just so good. And there really aren't many Led Zeppelin songs where he isn't playing magnificently. Even towards the end of his life, you can hear on Achilles' Last Stand, Nobody's Fault But Mine, and he's absolutely mind-blowing part on "Fool in the Rain." If you don't know it, just go and listen to it to hear somebody just absolutely taking drumming to another level. Monumentally influential. I doubt there are many, if any, rock or hard rock drummers in the world who aren't influenced by Bonzo. And whether they realize it or not, they've all stolen something from his canon of patterns and fills and parts. If you took an overall poll of drumming lists, I've no doubt at all that he would be at the top, possibly with Neal Peart just behind him. So that's my top 10. I mean, I've had to omit so many incredible players who I love, and I'm sure you do too. Mitch Mitchell, Bill Ward, Jeff Porcaro, Nicky McBrain, Bill Bruford, Cozy Powell, Levon Helm, what a feel, Alex Van Halen, Mick Fleetwood, another drummer with a fantastic feel, Carl Palmer, and of course Dave Grohl and Taylor Hawkins, all of whom and many more you could make a case for being in this list. To finish off, I saw the Foo Fighters live a few times, and it was always a great show. And Taylor Hawkins was a huge part of their appeal. He was such a dynamic, exciting drummer, and he often came forward to take the mic to sing a song by his beloved favourite band Queen, which became a big part of their show. And I think in an age when real rock stars are a bit thin on the ground now, he really was the real deal. And by all accounts, a very, very sweet guy too. And I hope you would have appreciated a list like this. Look, I'm sure you agree with some of my choices and vehemently disagree with others, but let me know in the comments below. And I will see you again soon for another Rock Records review. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Records review.